Welcome to the podcast, where we teach you how to create marketing that pops. Get ready for refreshing conversations with industry experts, trendsetters, and creative minds that'll leave you bubbling with inspiration. Get ready to turn up the volume on your business. Let's get talking. Welcome back to Marketing That Pops. I'm your host, Olivia. And
I'm Michelle.
And today we are joined by our guest, Nikki Rausch, the Sales Maven. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to get to chat with both of you.
Yes, we were really excited. Michelle was just talking about how she saw you at Social Media World, and that's kind of how she got her introduction to you. So we are so excited to have you on the pod. I know the girls were raving about your session, so excited to get into it today.
Awesome.
So Nikki, could you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just give us like a brief introduction. That would be great.
Thank you. Yes. So I am a sales coach and trainer. My background, I have pretty extensive background in sales. That was my professional career for many years. And I started Sales Maven back in 2013 as a way to work primarily with women. I work with everybody, but I primarily focus on working with women because I found that as I was meeting these amazing women that were super passionate about what they did, they struggled a lot of times to have effective sales conversations. And that was something I knew how to do. I also have a pretty extensive background in neuro-linguistic programming. If that's a new term to anybody, it sounds super scientific, but it's really the study of communication. And so when I started my business, it was with this idea of wanting to teach people how to be more effective in the way they communicate when they're in conversation with somebody. And so that's what I do. It's been the best gig I've ever had because I get to work with really cool women that are doing amazing things in the world and making big impacts and teaching them skills that takes the ick out of sales and allows it to be very conversational.
Oh, I love that. There is a lot of ick that is associated with sales and kind of just, the sales people get a bad rep.
Sometimes it's deserved. Yeah. Let's be honest.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I have some questions later that I want to ask you about just kind of connecting sales and marketing and how sometimes they kind of can butt heads. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So I'd love to start off by talking a little bit about our myth. So on every episode that we have, we ask our guests to debunk a myth. So today, my question for you is, in sales, when you get a no, does that mean that the conversation is over and the deal is dead? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I love that. It not necessarily, when you get a no, if you have done the sales process. Now, I teach a 5-step process. It's my signature framework for sales conversation. It's called the selling staircase. If you've gone through the steps and you get all the way to step 5, which is the close, and you issue that close language and somebody declines, you could check and see. And the way you would do this is you would say, is it okay to ask? That's what's known as a softening phrase, by the way. Most people, when you say something like that, they're like, yeah, you can ask. And they're more inclined to want to answer. So you would say, is it okay to ask your reason for declining? Because it could be that you missed a step. It could be that they have a question that hasn't been answered, or it could just be a not yet. Because sometimes we'll have this comes from my background in neuro-linguistic programming. People have what's known as a convincer strategy. Now, I want to qualify this and say, as the salesperson, your job is not to convince somebody to buy from you. That's also a myth. But your job is to be there and have the offer ready and issue that invitation when they're ready. So because people have what's known as a convincer strategy, and a convincer strategy is a certain number of times somebody will say no to something before they say yes. And you all are probably aware of this. I'll bring an example here. You might see an ad for something and your initial reaction when you first see it is like, that's dumb. Who would buy that? And then, pretty soon something happens in your life or some awareness, you read something and you see the ad again and you go, I wonder who uses that. And then see the ad again and you're like, I wonder how I would use that. And then you see the ad again. And at some point, you may actually decide to buy it. And we know this to be true because in marketing, this is why when you go on Instagram, you see the same ad pop up over and over and over again. They're trying to hit your convincer strategy. Doesn't mean that you will. If you really don't have a need for it, you won't ever buy it. But if you start to think, I wonder if I could use that, or I wonder how that would work in my life, or what I would benefit from, and then you purchase it, that is your convincer strategy saying, in this context, it took this many touches. So sometimes when you get a no from somebody, it's just a not yet. Now, what will often happen is they'll stay in your world. They'll stay in your realm in some way. They may stay on your email list, or they may stay connected to you on social media. And at some point, when their convincer strategy, when that number, whatever their number is hit, they will then come back and buy from you. And I can say I've had this happen so many times where somebody has said like, Nikki, I don't think this is for me. And then, literally 7 days later, they'll have signed up for an intensive VIP program with me because they were still getting stuff from me, and they were still in that investigative, like, I said no to her, but I'm actually still kind of thinking about it. And then they'll come back and buy. So when somebody says no to me and I'm kind of surprised by it, if it's like we've gone through the process and they showed a lot of interest, but they then said no, in my brain, when they say no, I just say, not yet.
Yeah, right. I know. And one of the things that we do a lot are like drip campaigns where, it may be like a series of like 5 to 7 emails where we're consistently hitting them. And, so many times, like we may have met somebody at a trade show and it's like a year and a half later, but it's because we're constantly dripping emails to them, like very slowly, not like annoying or anything, and adding value and have free downloads and here's how you do this, that type of thing. And then all of a sudden we get this lead and I like love you guys. I've been like downloading all your stuff and I love your email, stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, but as, an owner going, how come it's taking so long? It's like you want the thing right now, but you do have to be patient and wait until they're ready.
I always say you want to hit the trifecta. It's the right time, the right offer, the right price for this person. And you don't get to determine when that trifecta is. They determine that for themselves. And unfortunately, they can't even articulate to you when that's going to be. So that's why it's so important that you stay front of mind, that you keep in touch with people. Now, if you get a hard no, right? Like sometimes no really does mean no. And if you get a hard no, then you can bless and release and take that as not as rejection, but take that as good news, because now you don't have to spend any time, any resources, any energy trying to continue to nurture somebody who's like, I would never buy from you, lady. Like, I don't like you. I don't like your stuff. Great. Bless and release. Move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Bless and release. I'm going to keep that with me. So, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to just kind of hear a little bit more of your journey and like how you really developed the Sales Maven approach, just because it's working. And so I'd love to just dive into it.
Well, as far as like the signature framework, the selling staircase, that 5-step process for a successful sales conversation, that actually took a while, but it really came from me teaching, right? So me having, client sessions with people and the questions that they would. One of the things I learned this in my study of neuro-linguistic programming, that there is a structure to excellence. And when you can break down a structure for somebody, it allows for them to apply that to their own life or business, whatever the structure is in context to. And then they can see similar results. If you take somebody who's getting exceptional results, you break down the structure of how they're doing it, and you give them a step-by-step approach. Like most of us love a step-by-step, right? Like, oh, I can follow that. And it allows for your own kind of personality to shine through too, because just because you're following a step-by-step process doesn't mean you're a robot. Doesn't mean you have to talk like me or be like me. You get to be you, and you get to follow this process. And so when I started working with clients, when I was early into the business, like I was teaching the things that I knew how to do, but I didn't have like a process. I didn't have a signature approach. And I remember like breaking it down for a client. And at one point she said to me, and she had been through other coaches, other sales coaches, and really it took her a while to hire me because she was a little gun shy. She was like, I don't know, Nikki, I've worked with other sales coaches and their approaches. Like it just does not work with me. And then she ended up taking a chance on me, and we were sitting in her VIP day, and I was breaking down this process for her. And she was like, I really need it like broken down. I was like, great, I can get super granular if you want. So we were breaking it down, and she said, Nikki, it's kind of like the selling staircase to heaven. And so I was like, great, if that works for you, if you need a staircase, great, I'll do this. And then we ended up creating like an 11-step process. Now, over time, I was able to go, well, 11 steps seems like a lot. People go like, wow, that's a lot to learn. Yeah. And then I broke it down. I think I got it to 8, and then I got it to 7. And then just from really teaching and finding what were the things that lit somebody up and made them go, oh, I can do that. That's where the 5 steps ended up becoming the final like process. And now it's something that I teach over and over and over again. And people, my clients can repeat it back to me. They're like, oh, I know what step I'm on in this conversation with somebody right now. We're in step 2, and here's what I'm supposed to say or do that allows for us to continue this process and eventually earn the business.
Yeah.
Oh, were you going to say something, Michelle?
You know, I was going to say something.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, I know for me and probably a lot of people, that hardest part is not, that first meeting or the presentation meeting. It's the close, like asking for that business, because I know for me, I don't want to be that pushy salesperson. I don't want to be like just asking and asking. And, it's like you get done with that presentation and then it's like, like I've had so many that are so good, and I know like I connect with the people and I can just tell that's, they like me. And then all of a sudden it's like silence. I don't hear from them. Like, what did I do wrong? Like, what happened? And so I know in your session that I attended, you really talked about the simple phrases to help get to that point. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the things that we often forget when we're the seller is we get nervous, right? And we go like, oh, I don't want to come across pushy and they're going to make judgments about me. Like we get in our head and all these things. We forget though that the other person is in their head and they're thinking all kinds of things. And they're being exposed to you for the first time often, or the first time they're hearing your offer, or like what, thinking about something. And so they need time to process, but they also need a guide. Because they don't know what they're supposed to do or say next. And it's your job to guide. It's your job to earn the business. And so one of the ways that you can move somebody from one step to the next, and specifically on the close, is, you always hear people say like, ask for the sale, which I agree, ask for the sale, but I teach it as issue an invitation. And the reason I teach it as that is because most of us understand what it's like to receive an invitation to something. Doesn't mean we'll go. Doesn't mean we're going to participate. But one of the things we also know is that if everybody around us gets an invitation to the neighborhood barbecue, for instance, and you don't get the invitation because somebody assumes something about you, like, oh, Michelle's probably out of town that day, or, oh, Olivia's not going to want to come, you kind of feel a little bit slighted of like, wait, I didn't get an invitation. I would like to be the one to decline and make that decision for myself, right? So one of the things I always say is it's okay to invite people to whatever that next step is with you. And it's not a high pressure thing. It's truly an invitation, and they can decline and we're still fine. Our relationship can still be fine, but we have to give them that invitation. And the other reason it's so, so important that you close at the end of that conversation and when it's the appropriate time is if you don't close and you say to somebody, because you're worried about having the money conversation or you're worried about what they're going to think of you, and you say to them like, you send the message essentially like, you don't need to decide now. You can decide later. You are saying to them, hey, add this decision to your to-do list. And I don't know about you, Olivia or Michelle, but they say most of us die with our to-do list undone, right? Like we're always adding new things to our to-do list. So when you're trying to add to another person's to-do list, it's like, oh my gosh, I already have so many things on here. And now you're adding to my to-do list to decide later. But if you'll issue that close language in that meeting, you're actually doing them a service. You're making it easier for them to make a decision in the moment so they don't have to like spend time doing something later around this or get back in touch with you or schedule another call. And you're not prolonging them getting what it is that they're interested that you offer. So you're making it easy for somebody when you close. And when you have people who are just ghosting you and you go like, gosh, they seem so interested. And then they just kind of fell off the face of the earth. Like what happened? Chances are you didn't close. You never issued that close language. And when you don't issue close language, the thing about our brains is they're kind of lazy. And we're tired. We have what's known as decision fatigue, right? Like most of us are hit with so many decisions every day. And I think I shared this, Michelle, at the conference, but they say that adults make a certain number of decisions every day. Now I know Michelle may know this, but Olivia, we haven't talked about it before. So I don't know. If you think about on average, as the adult that you are, how many decisions do you think you make? Like get a number in your head.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit, only because I've heard the girls came back and like I said, they're really excited. So
you know the answer.
So I feel like I know the answer. But I would say probably I would have guessed maybe somewhere around 10,000.
Okay. That's a great guess.
I know that's not right.
Well, because you know the answer. They say the average adult makes somewhere between 30 and 60,000 decisions every day. So we have decision fatigue and we like things that are easy. You like things that are easy. Your buyers like things that are easy. So if you'll put that decision in front of them, you'll issue that closed language at the end of the conversation or when it's the appropriate time, you're making it so easy for them to decide in that moment, not have to do something with it later, or think about it more. Now, it doesn't mean they won't think about it. They might need some time to think about it. That's okay. Your job is to make it easy for them to get what it is they say they want. And that's not about being selfish and that's not about being pushy. It's actually about being of service. It's making it comfortable for the other person and easy for the other person. So I feel like that was a really long tangent. But Michelle, that, you'd asked about like closing, and closing language can be something as simple as saying to somebody, should we go ahead and get started now? Or is that something you'd like to go ahead and get signed up for? Or should I send over the proposal to you? Like you just issue that language, that invitation, and then you zip it and you wait and you let them tell you what they want to do or say next.
I love that. And I'm so glad you said it, because I was going to ask you, like, what are some examples of that closing language? But you gave it to us, so that's good. I know that you have worked with so many like huge names, and I feel like I know what you might say to this, but what do those experiences, what have they taught you about like the psychology of selling? Is it any different from, working with like a smaller company, or do you just feel like I can apply the same models to every company that you work with?
I love that question. Nobody's ever asked me that question that way. Okay, so I love it.
Good.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. So I come from this background of selling into technology, like selling technology into big companies. So, NASA was a client at one point, and Hewlett-Packard, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Facebook, and lots of big names. One of the things that I learned is initially I was somewhat intimidated, right? Like somebody has a business card, it's got this huge company, Microsoft or whatever on it. And you start to go like, oh, who am I to be here and sell to this person? But what I really started to realize in my career is that I'm selling to a person, and I'm not selling to a business card. I'm not selling to an entity. It's still me, Nikki, talking to another person who is either making the decision about hiring my company or buying my products, or now in my current situation, like hiring me to do training for their teams, it's still a person, or it might be a committee, but that's still made up of people. So you're still selling to people. And when you treat the person, that the relationship is important, that the rapport is critical, and you do everything you can to establish relationship and rapport, then it takes some of that pressure away of like whatever the big name is on the card. Because, even one of the large companies that I worked for, they were one of the largest companies in the world. And yes, my business card would open doors because people are like, oh, she works for Hitachi. Like, that's a big name,
Yeah.
And it would help open doors. But realistically, like once I'm in the door, I still am Nikki. I'm still me showing up. You're still you. And I have to relate to you as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. When you think about the types of companies that you have worked with, like what is your ideal prospect? Is it like, are you focused more on bigger companies, small to medium? Like what is that? Or is it like big teams or individuals? What does that look like?
Well, now in my current business, Sales Maven, I primarily work with small business owners and entrepreneurs. And like I said earlier, I have a real focus on working with women because I know that when women bring money into their families and into their communities, they give back. And that feels really important to me of this idea of making a positive impact in the world. So a lot of times now I'm working one-on-one with people, or I work with a small team. It's not that I don't, do trainings for big teams. I do. It's just I have a real passion for women in business. And a lot of times they have a smaller team, or maybe it's just them. And they're like, selling myself and selling my services feels hard and it feels weird. And, so that's like my ideal client.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah. And now that, I own my company and, we've really kind of jumped into like, hey, like, this isn't a bad thing that they're a woman-owned business. Like, there's a lot of other women-owned businesses. Let's just jump on this, and like not be ashamed of it, but be proud of it and really, promote that we are woman-owned. And if we want to do pink, we're going to do pink. If we, you know what I mean? And that's just who we are. And, whoever it is that we end up working with, this is what they're going to get, like we're women and, they have to like us. And if they instantly go to our website and they're, oh, that's pink, or I'm not going to deal with them, that's fine, because we probably wouldn't get along anyways. So, and it's, as a business owner, you're your own worst critic. And so you're always questioning like, oh, I don't know. And right now we're going through this whole website redesign. And of course, I'm the problem. I'm like, oh, I don't know. No, don't you think we should do this? It's hard when it
is hard.
Because you are just like critical of, yourself and worried, like, what's it going to seem like? What's it going to appear? What's the appearance going to be? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So.
I do believe, though, that, I have a philosophy around that in actuality, I want to repel people that aren't a good fit as fast as possible, because I call it clearing the field, right? Like, let's clear the field of the noise so that the ideal person gets the most attention and time and targeted message from me. Like I'm okay with somebody listening to my podcast and going like, I can't stand the sound of her voice, I'm out, right? Like, great, then you're not the right fit for me, versus the person who's like, well, I want to listen to a few episodes and then see if like what my next step might be with Nikki. Like, I love those people. Like, I want to clear the field and repel people as fast as possible who aren't a good fit, so that the people who are feel like there's plenty of space and room for them.
Yeah,
I do feel like as we have been leaning into more of our femininity, I guess I could say, I feel like we have been able to kind of it just has made our voice clearer, and like I feel like the designs are coming together faster, and it's just like we have a clearer direction of where we're going. So I'm loving it. I love the pink, and
yeah,
we're all for women power.
I know. I used to be embarrassed to tell people that pink was my favorite color. Like it has been since I was a little girl. Oh, no. And now I'm like, no, it really is my favorite color. I love pink. I like to wear pink. I like to look at pink. I like pink. Okay. That's me.
That's awesome.
So you kind of talked a little bit about your neuro-linguistics programming. But I'm wondering, like, what are the techniques that you or that business owners can use from that to like build rapport with like their potential clients, or like
okay,
potential clients?
So there's many, but I'll just give you I'll give you one, and then I'll go as far as you want to go with it. I could like sit here, we could do this all day. But here's one that people often don't think about. And it is from my background in neuro-linguistic programming, and it has to do with increasing your likability and credibility with somebody. And it's learning how to pay attention to somebody else's style and then adjust your style to make it easier for them to be in conversation with you. And the thing that I'm talking about here is your rate of speech. So if you think about like on a spectrum, for instance, you know, you've got like 0 to 10, and somebody who's a 10 is like a really, really fast talker. Sometimes they don't even take a breath between sentences. They have so much to say. They think fast, they talk fast, and sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise with them, right? And then like the auctioneer is like a 10, right? And then you have somebody else who's on the other side of the spectrum, and you could fall anywhere on the spectrum, by the way. And wherever you fall, you're perfect. But let's say that you're talking to somebody who has a much slower rate of speech. They have a thought, and then they think about it, and then they say it, which can be a real shock to those of us who are fast talkers. We're like, wait, you think about your thoughts before they come out of your mouth? Like how novel is that? Right? So when you have somebody who has a very different style of you, and specifically rate of speech, it can be difficult to be in conversation with somebody like that. Because either you're a fast talker and you start interrupting them and you step on everything they're going to say, or if they're a slower talker, they feel like they can't even like contribute to the conversation when they're talking to somebody who's a fast talker. So if you're willing to adjust your style to put the other person at ease and make it more comfortable to be in conversation, they'll do kind of three things. They're likely to stay in conversation with you longer. They're likely to be more revealing about how to earn their business, and they're likely to be more open to hearing what it is that you offer. So this is really important. And this in NLP, this is known as matching and mirroring. And there's a lot of ways you can match and mirror people, but voice rate of speech is one of the most effective. And it's something that you can do whether you're on a video call with somebody, if you're on a phone call with somebody, or any kind of a live interaction. Now, take the live interaction or any kind of like conversation out of it, and we're just on email, that's a whole different thing. But if you are in a conversation with somebody, you can adjust. And with matching and mirroring, it's not about matching 100% because that's mimicry. So if you're an 8 on that scale and they're a 3, it's unrealistic to think that you can get yourself down to a 3. Like you would really be like acting at this point. But if you can go from an 8 and slow yourself down like 50 to 60%, if you could get yourself down to a 5, what will happen is the person who's at a 3 will find themselves start to speed up a little bit, and you guys will find kind of a happy medium. And the thing that I often compare this to is when you meet somebody that you feel an instant connection to, like you're like, I don't know where you've been all my life, but Olivia, I feel like we should have been friends from kindergarten on. Like you're my person. You know those people that you just feel that instant connection with. And we like people. And what we find oftentimes is we like people who are like us. So you'll find that person has a lot of similarities to you that you're like, I don't know where you've been all my life, but we should have been friends since kindergarten because we are alike. But not only do we like people who are like us, but we think people who are like us are smart. Like, be honest. When you meet somebody who's like you, you're like, you are so smart. Like, I really like the way you think about that. You're very intelligent, right? And so it sends that message of like, we can be in conversation. And it's also known as synchronization, right? Like this idea of getting in sync with people. Now flip it. If you meet somebody who has a very different style than you, and you are in a conversation with them for like 5 minutes, and you go like, has it been 50 minutes that we've been talking? Because it's like exhausting and you feel like you need a nap after talking. Oftentimes it's because they have a very different style. But when you adjust to the other person, when you're willing to be that flexible, and I always say my favorite quote is, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." If you can show up and be flexible in the conversation to put the other person at ease, they'll appreciate it. And they may not even have a like conscious awareness of it, but they will start adjusting to you too, because it's easier to be in sync with somebody.
I love all of that. I was going to ask you a follow-up question, which was, obviously we're in 2025 and everything that we do is online. Yeah. I mean, we're talking here on a voice call. So I feel like building rapport is a little bit more difficult when you don't have that like face-to-face interaction. So you kind of said this, but is there any other things that people can do when they're trying to like make those connections when you're like, and it's just email and, we've had people who want to hop on a call and maybe they don't want to necessarily show their face or,
So if it's a written communication, so whether it's on social media or it's email or it's DM or whatever, one of the ways that you can pay attention is to notice the way they phrase things. And are they somebody who's like, "Hey, Olivia, how are you? How was your weekend? Oh my gosh, we went to the zoo this weekend and we did this and we did that. Hey, by the way, I just wanted to follow up with you about this thing that you had mentioned. Can you give me a bit more information?" Like they're showing you right there that they like that little bit of like personality. They want to have kind of more of a like conversational type communication. So you want to match that a little bit back. You don't want to just say like, "Here's your answer. Yes." That's such a mismatch, right? But if you get an email from somebody and they say, "Hey, Olivia, what's the answer to this question?" They're showing you like, they don't want the like, "Hey, how was your weekend? Oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you." Like they don't want all the story. They don't want all that. They just want a simple like, "Yeah, the answer for that is yes. Please reach out if I can be of further assistance." Like you don't have to be cold, but you do want to kind of match their style. Right. So that's one way that you can pay attention. Because the thing about us is, as humans, we walk around and we are just dropping cues and clues all the time about how to be in relationship with us. And if you'll pay attention to and pick those up and adjust for that person's style of communication, they will love you. They will appreciate that about you. People say to me all the time, like, "Oh, Nikki, I love the way you talk. And, oh, you're just so easy to be in conversation with." And I that's a nice compliment, but in actuality, I'm adjusting constantly to the other person. And that's why they find me like enjoyable to be in conversation with, because they're like, "Oh, I don't show up and be like, 'Hey, this is me, take it or leave it. Like you need to adjust to me.' I never show up in that kind of a contact." Well, sometimes if you're trying to earn my business, I might be a little bit more that way, but for the most part, that's not my style. I'm willing to adjust to other people to make it more comfortable for them. And they really appreciate that. And they don't even know. They say things like, "Oh gosh, I wish I could talk like you." And I think like you do, because I'm talking like you.
That's so funny.
I'm thinking Olivia is laughing because she can read me like a book and she knows like, but other people can't. And she's like, "Okay, Michelle's getting really annoyed. We have to move on." Or, "Oh, Michelle, what's going on? What's wrong?" It's like written all over my face. So I should be pretty easy to like relate to.
No, I love this. I'm like geeking out over here. This is really, it's tingling all of the things for me. I'm loving it.
Right.
So I want to ask you, I know that marketing and sales, they kind of can get the bad rep of like, sometimes they don't mesh well. What are some things that you feel like we can do to like kind of bridge that gap between sales and marketing?
Well, I always think that sales and marketing are like cousins. They're not the same. And there's often a like there's kind of confusion oftentimes because people think, oh, sales and marketing, because you hear those two terms together a lot. So they think like, oh, it's the same thing, but it actually isn't. And one of the things I think is a real important distinction is that marketing's job is to build awareness in the marketplace and potentially bring leads in the door. That's marketing's job. Sales job is to take that lead and turn it into a prospect and then eventually a client. It's sales job to close the deal. It's not marketing's. And I think a lot of times there's a misconception like, well, I spent all this money on marketing and I got all these leads, but none of them closed. Well, what was your sales process? And they're like, what do you mean a sales process? Well, you have to have a sales process. Like that's not marketing's job. It's not their job necessarily to close the lead. It's great when they do. Like that's awesome. People see something online and they're like, oh, I'm just going to buy that. And they don't need any interaction. But most of us, that's not how business is done. If you're doing business that way, fantastic. But a lot of times, especially again, in the space that I work with coaches and consultants, and they have to have conversations with clients. And so expecting marketing to do the job of sales is unrealistic. And also expecting sales to do the job of marketing. Like I have to say to people all the time that want my opinion about marketing, I say like, I can give you my opinion, but I'm not a marketing expert. I'm a sales expert. If we can talk about the sales process, if we can talk about the sales conversation, I can give you something that's going to make a difference. But if you want to know how to optimize your ads, I'm not your gal.
Yeah. There's a clear distinction for sure.
Yeah. I think too, like setting that expectation, like of what a good quality lead is. And so that sales and marketing are on the same page there, because what marketing might think is a good lead, sales is looking at them like, why does marketing keep giving me these crappy leads? And, just making sure that you have that conversation of, okay, like, are we on the same page? How are the leads going? Are they good? Are they qualified? How, just so that, okay, if they're good and qualified, okay, we're going to keep doing this same thing. But if they're not, okay, we have to change what we're doing just so that you are getting the good qualified leads. And I think, so many times it's just marketing is doing their marketing and sales is going down this road. And then you don't know like what's happening, like how many of those deals close. We need to know so that we can, provide the nice ROI and reporting and things like that. And so that is really.
And I love the idea, right? Like ROI, like you're speaking to my language because, that's money. And I love the concept of bringing money into the business. But there is also, I don't know if you know this term, ROO instead of ROI, but it's return on opportunity. And so a lot of times when you're doing, I think, marketing, sometimes you're not going to see necessarily a concrete ROI on it. It's great when you do, right? It's fantastic. But you also have to think about like, what's the opportunity? So, you've mentioned now a couple times, like you heard me speak at Social Media Marketing World. That came about, it was a total ROO opportunity, like how that even came about, because I have somebody who pitches me for podcasts, and that's a huge source of marketing for me is guesting on podcasts. And I was on somebody's podcast, and Michael, who is the person who puts on Social Media Marketing World, he heard me on somebody else's podcast and then reached out and said, hey, Nikki, will you come on our podcast? So I went on his podcast, and then afterwards he said, I'd really like you to come and teach some of this stuff at my conference. Right. But that wasn't, you can't say, oh, like the return on the ROI on this from me being on this other person's podcast. That was more of an ROO opportunity than it was like an ROI opportunity. And so I think a lot of times around what's my return on opportunity, and even going and speaking at Social Media Marketing World, like that's how I got to be on your podcast, right? That came from that. That's another opportunity that's presented. And there may or may not be somebody listening to your podcast right now that's thinking like, oh, I think I want to work with Nikki, right? Like that would be an ROI, great, but it had to come from these like opportunity that came from another opportunity that came from another opportunity. So it's also why I say yes to just very rarely do I say no to things, because I'm always thinking like there could be opportunity from that and you just don't know what it's going to be. So be on the lookout for those too.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. That's awesome.
I love that. So I want to get into kind of like the entrepreneur's mind, and I know we all we make mistakes and we learn from them, but what are some common mistakes that entrepreneurs make when they are trying to close a sale that maybe, I know that you said like maybe the ask, is there any other ones that maybe they should be like looking out for, that they could be making a change?
Well, one big misconception is I think people think that sales is something you do to another person. And I say, no, sales is actually something you do with somebody else. And so when you're thinking about closing business, you shouldn't be the person who's trying to do something to somebody. You shouldn't be talking at people. You should be thinking about it from a with conversation. So that means that a conversation is actually a two-way thing. It isn't talking at somebody, it's talking with somebody. So that means that you don't just show up and word vomit all over somebody and think you're going to earn their business. There needs to be opportunity where they're speaking, you're listening, you're asking really smart questions. And one of the biggest mistakes that comes from the like why the sale never actually closes is because you didn't ask the right questions. You didn't get the information that you needed in order to put an offer back in front of this person that really speaks to the heart of their problem and their need. And so I think a lot of times people think, well, like, oh, I have this sales opportunity. I have to show up and I have to like put on a performance. And that's like you acting like you're the monkey and you're supposed to dance for this person. Like, no, that's not how you sell to somebody. You're not performing. You're actually showing up from a curious place and finding, do they have a need? Do I have a solution that meets that need? And do I have permission to put that in front of them? And if those three things are in place, then when you put your offer in front of them, they're more open to receiving it and they're more open to saying yes. But it really comes down to, are you asking the questions and getting that information earlier on in the conversation? Because if you just show up and be like, hey, this is what we tell everybody, this is what we do for everybody, here's my spiel, and it's like you're just pressing play on me and I'm just like word vomiting it back to you, like that doesn't feel conversational and it doesn't feel targeted to the person who's sitting listening to it. So it's like, I don't even think you're speaking my language. Like, I don't think you're speaking to the heart of what I'm trying to solve here, what I'm trying to accomplish. So of course it's a mismatch, and it's so hard to earn somebody's business if you don't have that information that you need in order to make your offer tailored to meet their need, to solve their problem. And now it isn't about you. It's not about like how good you are or all the things you've accomplished or here's your resume and all that. Like they don't care. They don't care about that. They care, do you have something that's going to solve my problem and meet my need? And are you treating me with a level of respect? And am I open to hearing your message? Then yes, you have a good chance of earning the business.
Yeah. I've heard salespeople say, what's it going to take? Or like, what I got to do to get a yes? And I just always, I'm not, what do you feel? What's your take on someone asking a question like that? Do you feel like those are good questions, or do you feel like that's not a good enough, like?
It wouldn't be the question I would lead with. Here's what I would, here's what I would recommend. That question can be appropriate in a conversation. And it's more appropriate when we've had a few conversations, or maybe there's been some hemming and hawing, or maybe you've said yes, but then you've backed out. At some point, you might want to pose the question to somebody like, and the question isn't like, what do I have to do to earn your business? It's more like, what would it take to make this an easy yes for you? Because now it might be something that has nothing to do with me as the seller. It might be something they need to figure out, or it might be something they need to have a conversation with somebody, or like, we don't know, but having the ability to ask the question is important because they may not know yet what it would take for it to be an easy yes. So I'm not opposed to the question. I am more like, let's be thoughtful about when it's asked. When you think about questions, and actually I have a gift for your audience around this, but I'm just going to bring it up anyway. And it's like I teach there are two types of questions that you should be asking in the discovery process. There's the right fit questions that helps you identify, like, am I talking to somebody who's a potential client, and or am I talking to somebody I should bless and release? And that's okay, but we need to know that based on the questions, your right fit questions. And then the second type of questions that you ask in that discovery are your expertise questions. These are the ones that instead of you feeling like I've got to be the monkey and dance and perform for this person about how great I am, you can ask a really smart question that makes somebody go like, dang, Olivia, I don't know the answer to that, but the fact that you're asking me makes me think I need to work with you. So you can ask these, I call these your expertise questions. It plants seeds in the mind of the buyer to go like, oh man, like Michelle, I need to know the answer to that. And probably the only way I'm going to get the answer is by working with you.
Yeah. Right.
You're right.
Thank you. Yeah. I love when people say you're right. I love that. Thank you. That's so flattering.
Yeah. And you're doing, and you are like awesome because you have a nice call to action because you're giving away, something to the audience to teach them. It's something that's valuable that they can actually use, and they're going to remember that, and they're going to, when they are ready, they're going to reach out and go, yeah, like I heard you on this podcast. I got that free resource and now I'm ready. Now let's do it. Let's get together and let's, work together. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
We love to provide the valuable.
Yeah. I don't know should I drop that link now or should I wait till it, I don't want to interrupt the flow, but
no.
Okay.
Go ahead. Let's drop it.
So because I mentioned this about questions, I have a training that breaks this down. Like, what are your right fit questions to ask? How do you craft your expertise questions? It's called Seal the Deal, Questions That Close Sales. Normally I charge for it, but I'm going to give it to your audience. It will be my gift for you listening to the podcast with me as the guest today. Yay. So you can get it by going to yoursalesmaven.com. So that's my website, yoursalesmaven.com/MTP. So marketing that pop. So I want to make sure I said that right. And then you can grab that training. Like I said, you'll see on there, there's no place that you have to put in your credit card. It's ready for you to just go and download it. And I would love to gift it to you because I know that when you ask smarter, better questions in that call, you will increase your chances of closing that business because you will be able to tailor your answer, your offer, everything to that person. So they're like, oh, I feel like you just speak my language. I'm so in.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love it.
Well, I have loved this conversation so much, Nikki. I don't know if you've been mirroring us this whole time, and that's why I loved it, but I enjoyed myself. I had a good time.
So
much. So I just want to say, where can people, I know you just gave that, but where else can people find you on the internet? Can they follow you on your podcast and social media?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I do have a podcast. It's called Sales Maven. So you can find it on your favorite podcast platform, whatever that is for you. I'm on Spotify, Apple, all of them. You can find me there. There's the website, which is yoursalesmaven.com. And on social media, you'll find me under Sales Maven or Your Sales Maven. Either one depends on which platform you're on. But I think usually if you type in Sales Maven, you'll find me because I kind of come up. I've been around for a while, so you'll find me there. And I'd love to connect. If you're listening and you're like, what did Nikki mean when she said XYZ? Like, reach out and ask me. I'm happy to clarify. I love to hear from listeners. And if there's some way that I can support and be a resource and you're ready to kind of take a next step, like, again, please reach out. I'm very approachable, very easy to get in touch with. And it would be an honor to hear from a listener who wants kind of that next step in increasing their confidence.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you being on too.
Yeah. I do have one final question for you. because you have so many resources, where is the best place for people to start? Should it be like on the podcast, or should there, I mean, you have 3 great books that you have. So what's the best way for people to really get like honed in and start with?
Well, I'm going to say, because I'm on a podcast, that chances are there's some part of your listeners that are like, we like this format. So yeah, go listen to one of the solo episodes of my podcast. So I have a couple different types of episodes I do, but a solo episode is me usually teaching a concept and giving some technique and some strategy around something. So yeah, and there's, I don't know, I'm up to 275 podcasts now. So there's plenty of content there for you to go and find something that speaks to you. So start with the podcast, I would say, Sales Maven.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nikki, so much for being on the pod. We have enjoyed you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening with us today. Stay tuned for the latest in web marketing and design from ThrivePop. Want to be a pop star? Head over to thrivepop.com/podcast to join our mailing list for episode notifications, sneak peeks, listener feedback, and more.